all the way
No,
up to the
I didn't
tunnel?
do that. And if you can wake it after 6 o'clock, it will help you immensely.
One of the things that I found interesting yesterday, it looked like the MacArthur
1985, I attended my first convention, which was the Atlanta convention that I attended back in 1984. I've done every convention, been to every convention except one. 1993 I've attended. Okay, one of the things I hear so commonly, one of the social theories of pronouncement I hear more commonly is that the black community is homophobic. I keep hearing it. I say, well, okay. Why should the black community be more homophobic than any other community? And I always said, well, look, I said the white community or communities, which is, I think we need to speak in the plural term anyway, because there are differences in points of view. I mean, heck, there's about 800 of us in NABWMT, and we have a lot of differences. Well, think a community of 25, 30 million people as black identified population in the U.S. is going to have some differences. And we know the larger white populations have some differences. I don't necessarily think the white community is necessarily more supportive of gay, lesbian ideas and socialization and politics. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm putting out some things I think would challenge that. The first assumption I want to challenge shows in voting patterns. Now in Miami-Dade County, as many of you have been around a long time know, there was a big referendum, there was a big fight back in 1977. June the 8th, 1977. They had passed a gay civil liberties ordinance had passed in January of that year. Well, a petition drive, as often happens in such controversial cases, took place. They got the signatures, got fast, and had a tremendous number over the minimum they needed. According to the law, that issue gets placed on the ballot. And that issue amended the Human Rights Ordinance in Miami-Dade County to protect lesbians and gays. Well, there were citizens here that took an issue to that. There were certainly other people involved, but the most visible and well-known was Alvin Dark, who was one-time manager of the San Francisco Giant baseball team. I know he did that. And also Anita Bryant, the famous singer, the famous supporter of the Florida Commission of Citrus Orange Juice and citrus juice. They were the key spokesmen for this campaign. So that was a big campaign. Television, print copy, reporting, very controversial. Sometimes nasty things happens. There was film commercial showing. They used examples from San Francisco and New York gay pride parades. And obviously they picked what some people feel are the more controversial things. Things like people going around in dresses, or people characterizing nuns. Sisters Perpetual Indulgence, I believe that was the name of that group at the time. They were using that, and this was seen as homophobia in the black community window. Okay, and this was seen as a bad example of something we don't want for our families and children. Oh, and homosexuals, they don't reproduce, they convert, they recruit. That was the word, the term, recruit. In other words, since you can't, according to Anita Bryant and their forces, you can't reproduce. The only way you're going to increase your numbers to get anyone is you've got to recruit them. So that got in there. Well, when the vote came, it passed 71 to 29 by any means of any kind of election. You would consider that a landslide, a resounding one. I don't think anyone has never been elected president, not in a free election in this country, has ever been elected president with that kind of popular vote. As high as I was able to find was 61.4 for Johnson over Goldwater in that election in 64. So that was amazing, something to lose by that margin. And one of the things I looked at a number of precincts. I went back and pulled Miami Herald to look at the voting statistics. And I found that most precincts, of course, when you're losing 71 to 29, you're getting beaten almost everywhere. One big example, the most strongly supportive instance, was a heavily Jewish precinct in northeast Miami-Dade County. So that and other corroborative evidence leads us to believe that the Jewish community, by a 7-3 margin, I might add, strongly reported retaining this ordinance in this county. I saw that that was the case. Okay, well, let's look at black communities. What did they do? Found out, I looked, it was about an even split. The one specific precinct I looked at, for example, it was 55 to deny, 45 to retain. The other ones were right around 50-50. But the amazing thing is, in that particular referendum, the turnout was only about 10% in the black communities. Elsewhere, overall, the overall county average was 48%. So that suggests strongly that this particular issue was not important in black communities, or else campaigning for either side was not intense there. You got a pretty much of a split vote. You had a very low turnout. That was a comment from a black social worker. The social worker said, look, housing, jobs, and survival are a lot more important. This is a white issue. Okay. So that's one of the evidences I would cite here is that, well, look, if black community was more homophobic when other communities was coming out voting 70 and 80% where people live against it. You didn't have that here. You didn't get the affirmation that was in the Jewish community. You did not get that. But you certainly didn't get the lopsided opposition that were in other places. Little Havana, for example, they voted there 71 to 29 against it. Little Havana, at that time, the demographics have changed since then, but at that time, that was basically mostly Cuban immigrants, people that had become citizens. They voted against it. A couple of other areas that it passed by small margins was in the Coconut Grove area in Miami. That was a place noticed to have a number of gay people that living there. So that might be contributes to that. And there was an area on South Miami Beach that the retention efforts succeeded. They won that area. You just got to remember, back at that time, South Miami Beach wasn't then what it is now. There were a lot of elderly, a lot of mainstream residents there. You didn't have all of the current situation, who lives there, and so forth now. It wasn't all that many gay nightclubs. It was a different situation. So I saw this. So that made me apprehensive. Also, I've noticed that in these campaigns, Miami-Dade County back in '77, you had referendums in St. Paul, Minnesota, that later that year and the next year. You had referendums in Seattle, Washington. You had a referendum, it was a very visible one, about school teachers. In California, people alleged to be school teachers in California. There was a referendum that year. At that particular place, Wichita had one in Kansas. We lost every one of those referendums except the one in Seattle. We won that one. We won that one in Seattle by a 57 to 43% margin. None of those referenda did I see any visible black leaders being reported as campaigning against the referendum. I didn't see any campaigning for it either. I mean, if this was such a big thing, why weren't there more? And so, any of these cities, black communities are not really large in any of these cities. I think Seattle, the ones I named, outside of Miami-Dade County, Seattle had the largest. Wichita, St. Paul, for example. Eugene, Oregon is the other one that I missed, that we had one in. We lost that one too. I was very shocked that we had lost Eugene because I thought that was more a liberal place because of the presence of a major universities there, but it didn't work out that way. The margin was projected over 60% there. But in none of these cases were any of the traditional black leaders or civil rights organizations visible there. One other piece of evidence that's out there, plenty of that, legislative sponsorship. All of you, I assume, are aware of a body, a group called the Human Rights Campaign Fund. They are a heavily political group. They are a lobby. They give money to candidates that's supportive of lesbian and gay issues. Almost invariably is candidates on the congressional level, senators and representatives. I went and pulled the Black Caucus and looked at the scoring. Almost virtually without exception, the black representatives that were canvassed here came out taking pro-gay positions, often as much as 100%. There were a couple of exceptions. One exception was Sanford Bishop in the 1st District of Georgia. That's Southwest Georgia, while Albany, Georgia is. Well, his district is only black by a comparatively small majority. He has been less supportive, but still his scores run 50 and 60%. Sanford Bishop. The only major exception I could find of any of the black representatives in the U.S. Congressman occurs in the state of Oklahoma. I bet some of you that are politically knowledgeable can name who this gentleman is.
J.C. Watts.
That's right. You know he recently announced he retires. Guess what he scored? 0. He wouldn't support anything that the Human Rights Campaign Fund would score him as being pro-gay lesbian. Now, to be honest, I'm not shocked or surprised at that. He was elected as a conservative Republican. He's in line with people like Chris Lott in the Senate of Mississippi, Newt Gingrich, conservative Republican. Oklahoma is a very difficult state historically for gays, and politically, if you look at the scores, you can see I don't think anybody got more than 20 of the representatives there. For example, Einhoff, who's now a senator, remember he campaigned when he was running. That was 1994. You know, that was a big Republican year. Nobody Republican ran for re-election for the House or Senate that year lost. It was that big a year. Well, Einhoff campaigned on God, guns, and gays on the Clinton administration. The 3G man. And so he scored 0-2, and he still has in the Senate. So that gives you a whiff about what the conditions are in Oklahoma. Well, look, why are all these representatives running out, signing on things supported by the Human Rights Campaign Fund? That material gets published. I can imagine someone running a commercial pointing that out in campaigns against me. I'm going to be doing that sort of thing, and that's going to come out. Well, it seems to me that if they're doing that, and the Black Caucus signs on most gay-related matters very positive each time, it would seem to me if that's going to get me in trouble, I'm going to be reticent to do it. Sanford Bishop, of course, is, because he's got a marginal district. But evidently, it must not be, to me, it must seem, certainly in the political policy sense, it must not be a threat in black communities, because you wouldn't be getting these things. Because, I mean, my gosh, you sticking your neck out there for an issue, you can get it cut off. And at the same time, I've noticed that white representatives in a lot of these districts, some of them were less supportive. You had some that were very much supportive. There are some that scored a 100, but there are some scored 0, 20%. You might be lucky to get 40 out of them. For example, in the state of Alabama, there's a black representative out of the Birmingham area, Earl K. Hilliard, he scored 100. None of the white ones scored above 0. Seems like that doesn't seem to be much homophobia in the black community for me. If that's going on, I say, well, why is this? The white ones ain't doing it. Okay, Ed?
When you go down the voting patterns, the black advocacy, the legislative sponsorship, when you conclude your analysis after your research, what do you think about homophobia? And this is a two-parter. What do you think in terms of what it was 10 or 15 years ago and what it is today?
I will say this. Certainly in the realm of public policy and the political sphere, you can be a black representative in the U.S. Congress. You can be a black representative in state legislatures. You can take pro-gay lesbian stances on issues. I don't believe, certainly in the majority of cases, you're going to get defeated for that. I'm not saying there's not homophobia in the black community, but I am saying it in the political sense and public policy sense that it's not going to cost you something to lose. And at least in the white communities, at least in some white communities, you might, or there's certainly fear of that because you're not seeing them doing it. I don't know, for example, if Trent Lott of Mississippi started voting pro-gay, or if M. Hunt Einhoff of Oklahoma did that. Would they survive politically? Would they have to answer for it? Or J.C. Watt, if he did in that district, would he have to answer for it? I suspect that they would, because that was one of the reasons they were put there. Yes.
Are you going to relate any part of your discussion to the black church as opposed to just the political realm?
Yes, I will do that. And also, to finish answering your question, Ed, homophobia, there is still plenty of homophobia out there. That's one reason that we're still here. We've been in business ourselves 22 years now. There's still plenty of it there. I will say, in some ways, measurable ways, it has decreased. There are things that we enjoy, that we experience now. 10 years ago, it was very rare indeed. 20 years ago, it was unheard of. I'm sure right now, as we walk by as interracial gay couples in a lot of places, we don't necessarily get the attention, and especially the negative attention, that we once would get. Neither is the case for straight couples. I didn't say that some people don't look twice, and there's still some stuff out there, but I said to the degree it once was, I don't think it is there. But it is not by far that's something we have made. We don't. I'll say it that way. Now, D.A. Leonard, yes. Let me go to D.A. Leonard's question first, to be fair. Did you ask the question about the black church?
Right.
Okay. I found in black churches, this is my experiences, depends on what church you go to, who the ministers and the deacons are. I could go back to my experiences in Tallahassee. I was out, ran for the city commission in that city. Didn't win, didn't get close to winning. But I could go to black churches, which I did do, be recognized, ministers say things from the pulpit. They never said anything about my sexuality. At least not while I was there to hear it. I'm not saying what they did behind the scenes. But when I was there, they did not do that. I had one minister, an associate minister, in fact, of a church I regularly attended. In fact, that minister just died recently. Recently, I got his funeral thing at home. That would be a setback. I'd have him still be in Tallahassee, and I went there regularly. Well, the associate pastor there said that he couldn't understand when I ran why white gays didn't come out to be more supportive of him. He said, as far as he's concerned, he didn't care whom I socialized with or whom I slept with. It clearly did not bother him. He told me flat out to my face. And the other ones there, cases. There is one other case of interest. This was not strictly gay, but it was an issue that was tied to gays. AIDS issues, AIDS education. One of the churches, officiated by a woman, we had an AIDS program in training union. One evening we played a tape from public television. I had an appearance on WFSU talking about AIDS, about the rap record, and so forth. We played it in training union, and it was acknowledged on there that I was gay. It did not bother her. In fact, there's further evidence of that when we had an MCC there, she took her church, all black, and had a session with the MCC, virtually all white. I think I was the only black person I saw that went there on a regular basis. On occasion I would go. I didn't see any of us there. And she said, no, it doesn't matter to her sexuality. She was concerned with souls. And they came and had a service in her church at one time. So obviously, at least those two particular churches, at least in Tallahassee, in my experience, I got in. We know that in Miami-Dade County there are two black churches, Bethel Baptist Church or Bethel AME Church right downtown in Miami. They have an AIDS ministry. They allow P-flag meetings in that church. It takes place right on Northwest 8th Street in Miami. That one's supported. There's another church that has a very active AIDS ministry. Also, Mount Tabor. In fact, that was an article in the Wall Street Journal about that work that goes on. Yes.
Ali, you're presenting us with essentially local and anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
Have you checked if there are any studies or surveys done within the greater black community regarding views on homosexuality as opposed to a similar survey in the white communities?
I've looked and looked. I have not been able to find those. Now, this here is not anecdotal. You can check the Human Rights Campaign scoring. It's a matter of how you view the historic supportive legislation. This is not anecdotal here. There's basis for this. Certainly there was basis. I don't know what's going to happen in this referendum, what I'm going to talk about coming up. Certainly there's basis back in 1977, solid returns from those precincts. We know who lives there. We know they at least electorally, they behave that way. So that tells me that much. Okay, yes.
And, you know, in answer to Erwin's questions, if it's anecdotal, it's national. It's national hearsay. Because I can report the same thing that Ollie reports in Memphis, Tennessee. Periodically, I will send those to sociological feelers out of mine and ask people. And I think one of the reasons, and I don't mean to take too many cookies here, too much time, but one of the reasons for this is that over the years, something you mentioned earlier, and that was housing, jobs. These pressing social issues for us have been far more important than who a person slept with or who we socialized with. Because as the minority, one of the premier minority communities within this country, we have been preoccupied with survival more than we have with anything else. Today, to my knowledge, and I go back to the academics and to the research that has been done, there has not been any quantitative research done, period, in the black community. Because most of the writers still are European Americans. And because they do not have entry into the black homophile community because they are not trusted. And they were probably trusted more 30 years ago than they are today because there is a rise in racial tension in this country. And there has been a continual rise. Now, and part of the reason I asked, the last question I'm going to ask Ollie is, something that's already begun to segue into, and that is some of the potential impact of HIV infection and illness in the black community, because what I found is not only have the churches in the buckle of the Bible Belt, which is Memphis, been establishing and performing more and more AIDS outreach and AIDS service, but that has been a catalyst to help them come to grips with their own feelings and emotions in a lot of instances. And the reason for that is that if it wasn't the minister, it was Sister Brown's brother or Sister Brown's nephew or Mother Mary's nephew or son that was actually ill and had to be taken care of. Okay? So I'm adding maybe to what you're saying in that what I have been able to find out is, by talking to people, by reaching out over a number of years, an ebb and flow. But the last question I want to ask you, why do you think traditionally the black community has possibly been seen as necessarily homophobic?
I don't have the slightest idea as to why. I've heard stories. I keep hearing that, no, You can't talk about that in black families, and of course, the church has been an issue when that church is. And I've always said it depends on what church, especially the church leaders, who it is. Now, no mistaking. There are conservative churches and conservative ministers that think that being gay or lesbian, you're busting on the gates of hell. To say it in a crude way. It's definitely not going to be any support there. But some cases they are. And I'm saying that it's not uniform like that any more than it's uniform like that in white communities. If I go to Jehovah's Witnesses or Latter-day Saints or Southern Baptists being pro-gay or pro-lesbian, I don't think only in a minority of cases I'm going to get anywhere. Now, if I go to Unitarians, there's a better chance. If I go to certain of the Catholics, and Catholics are kind of mixed too, sometimes yes and sometimes no, although we know what the official stance from Rome is, that you can be gay or lesbian but be celibate. You can do that, and there have been movements from the Vatican to restrict the dignity movement. Those are ministers to gays and lesbians in cases, but it's a more mixed situation there. But generally, the more mainline, older denominations tend to take a harder line than a lot of the newer ones. I mean, the Episcopalians, Unitarians, Friends tends to be more liberal on that. And gay lesbian issues have definitely been a hot button issue, a divisive issue in the Episcopalian Church. Am I not correct, Dr. Pruitt?
You are right.
Okay.
And the African American bishops have been more supportive than the white bishops have been consistent.
Okay, so that is Paul.
Yeah, I don't fancy myself being able to definitively answer your question, Ed, about why is it that anecdotally we keep hearing that the black community is more homophobic than the white community. But my educated guess says that it's because it's a manifestation of racism.
Mm-hmm.
That we continually in this country look at the black community as being less than, as less sophisticated politically, less sophisticated socially, and more often, I would say in my own experience, 9 times out of 10, when I have heard a reference to the black community being more homophobic than the white community, it has been from a white person. And I can specifically remember, for instance, when I was at the Creating Change conference in Milwaukee a year and a half ago, and a white reporter found out that we were from Black and White Men Together sitting at a table, and then came up to us and said, so, I really want to get your opinion about homophobia in the black community, and why is it that it's so bad? And so, our immediate job was to challenge the assumption
That's why
from
I'm
that
here.
reporter.
You're doing the same thing I'm doing. That's why I'm
Right.
here. That's what this is all about.
But I just want to just put it out in the room that I think that this is another example, in my mind anyway, of how these isms intersect and overlap and reinforce each other and make each other stronger. So that's my educated guess in answer to your question, Ed.
Dr. Cruz.
Mine, again, is more anecdotal, but certainly it matches yours, and I hear it more from white gays than I do from white heterosexuals. And I think there's a knee-jerk reaction on the part of what I call mindless white gays, who just feel that if you're not in solidarity with me, given all you've experienced, you're lower than dirt, and there's no reciprocal solidarity coming there when all the other issues in place. I mean, I just don't see the two issues as manipulable like that. I mean, racism is going to be here long after homosexuality issues are solved. And if you're not in solidarity on issues of rights, I don't know how you get solidarity on anything else.
Mr. Washington.
I also think the assumption comes out of indirect observation. For example, historically, because of affluence and perhaps greater absolute numbers, the white gay community has been able to organize into social units, neighborhoods, and communities. whereas the black community, because of a difference in numbers as well as affluence as well as independence, has not been able to organize the same number of social clubs and units. And so people extrapolate sometimes and say, well, if people aren't free to do it, they must be locked into a higher level of community homophobia. And that is simply an assumption that's not substantiated by anything.
I would say that, or in my experiences on the political side of those elections in Tallahassee, in fact, the one that I ran the strongest in, I got 11% that time. That's the highest I ever did there. In that particular race, I actually took plurality. There were 5 other people running in black communities. I got 40% in some of those communities. I didn't get all that many white votes. I got most of those votes were there. So that would lead me to believe, because after all, it was printed in the Tallahassee Democrat, it was on television, on the radio, that I was gay and I had been out. So it's been out there. It wasn't made a major issue in the race, but it was out there as long that I was. Well, my gosh, it would seem to me that it bothered some people, but it didn't. In fact, I'm going to, as much, to the degree. In fact, I'm going to go back. One thing I'm pretty safe at. Let's go back to 1989 to the Tallahassee Convention. Dr. Richard Moore spoke to us. Now, amidst all the concern that the room was too hot and uncomfortable, that his speech was too dry. Some of you that were there remember that. But if you go back into the substance of what this gentleman said, one of the things I won't forget is this. He said, when it comes between gay issues and black issues or civil rights issues, the civil rights, the black issues, and the black community is going to always come first. So that leads me to believe what that social worker was saying. If it's issues about economy, work, employment, housing, especially as relates to the black community, whatever. If you're talking about lower income and working class black communities, not necessarily middle class ones, and there's more of that middle class ones now than there was back then in '77, especially in the South there were. Well, those issues are going to take precedence. For example, marches on Washington. We had no problem getting Jesse Jackson to come out and speak at lesbian and gay rallies. And a lot of white folks, so-called white liberals, were hard to find. And no white conservatives, no way they would call me one of those. They would. Evidently, I would assume that with Jackson, if you were conservative, you conservative black, you probably not going to want to support him. Certainly conservative whites you're not going to. If you're liberal whites and so forth, it's not going to matter. But it certainly didn't hurt him in black communities to come out and be supportive. I mean, he rang up over 90% majorities in some of those primaries. It didn't seem to hurt him. I mean, even some of his controversial foreign policy gambits, and actually some of those things netted results. My gosh. He got some people out of prison. He freed some folks. He got some wins. Freed some hostages. But they said he was meddling, but it didn't seem to hurt him. That didn't either. That doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. But those issues didn't hurt him. So that's something a little bit more than anecdotal to me. Okay, yes.
Well, this is a little bit more than anecdotal too. And I'm going to say two things. And one of them is that I want to remind this that it was this organization indirectly that was responsible for homosexuality and gay rights coming on the mainstream as far as civil rights is concerned. And the reason I say that is because if you think back, it was we who insisted in the last march, or not, that the gay rights march to Washington, that civil rights, that the black issues be a part of their platform. And it was that march, it was the result of that march that allowed Benjamin Davis, when he was in office, to endorse gay civil rights as a primary civil rights issue in the country. And because, and that was primarily because black issues were included in the state platform. It's sort of like the same thing we go through here with the bars. If you support us, we can support you. And Barry Ruffin, many, many years ago in LA, reminded us of this, that the reason he garnered so much support from the Asian Pacific Islander community or Chicano community or Latino community was because when they were on the front line fighting for their rights or for recognition, he was there. He got arrested for Asian Pacific Islander rights and so forth and so on. The other thing I want to say is that I want to challenge the NABWP because to date, to the best of my knowledge, and I am a trained sociologist, and to the best of my knowledge, there has been no quantitative or qualitative information really garnered from the African American homophile community. And that is a fact that has stood over 20 years or so in the opinion of academia. And I'm concerned about that because this organization has never, it's important that we get some quantitative information out of the homophile black community and out of the black community as it relates to their rights. It is important that we do that because of the discussion we're having right now. We don't know.
Okay.
We know anecdotally. We know what our feelings are and we know what we can garner. But we haven't encouraged any kind of surveys, any kind of analysis of what that constituency or that community feels about us. And we need to do that as an organization. We need to find out what others, what groups, minority groups, powerful minority groups in this country, Latino community, African American community, other communities, really actually feel about homophobia. And the reason about homosexuality, homophobia, and the reason we need to do that at this juncture is because we need to be able to talk about how much support we may be able to garner for election purposes and otherwise from those same communities. We need to know that because when we face elections or whatever, or funding or granting, we need to know how much support we've got as a community. And we've never done that.
The closest we get to that was past
Yeah,
Reggie
I know.
and Gavin when they surveyed people of color on their attitudes of safer sex and male-on-male sex, even if people weren't identified as gay. And that's the last and the only thing that we've ever done on that.
Yeah, we have to.
Now, one thing about particular Miami-Dade County, and I'm going to, Lord willing, if I'm healthy and not injured, I'm going to do something. We're going to have this referendum coming up on September the 10th. Now, here's a chance to get some hard data. I know that most of the living arrangements here are in largely segregated communities. There are some mixed ones, but I know there is a pattern for people from Haiti to live in certain parts of Miami and Miami-Dade County. You can go straight up north to Little Haiti, straight up north. You know you're going to have a lot of Haitian influence. We know there's a lot of places that second generation from people that immigrated from Cuba, they live. We know we've got people from almost any country in Central and South America here. Yes, I did Medicaid interviews and eligibility for people at the UM Jackson Medical Center in Cedars a few miles over to the West Indies. And that wasn't a country in that part of the world I didn't get someone from, at least 2 cases. I mean, even the low population places like Uruguay and Paraguay, places a lot of people have not heard of. I hope they've heard of them here, but a lot of places probably don't even know anything about, have heard of the country. We get here people from those places. Now, of course, you normally have to be a citizen to vote. The great majority of people vote as citizens. You're not supposed to be non-citizen, but you know that's not perfect either. But anyway, we know that, and they are in the vote. Most of the time, you've been here sometimes. You're somewhat acculturated into the political environment. Now, I can look at those precincts, and we're going to see if there are any disparities of how they vote in this referendum. I can go down to low-income black precincts, middle-income working class. I know what districts most people tend to live in. We're going to have some data on that, because I'm going to gather it. And obviously the political scientists, if they wish, they could apply statistical methods to it, and we're gonna do that. And I want to generate an article, maybe for the quarterly. If the quarterly won't run it, I'll put it on my email, or I'll type it up the old-fashioned way and mail it to folks, to let people see what the results are here. And this is interesting because we've had stuff, I got articles here right now from the Miami Herald. This group countering the referendum, the one that if you went to last night, remember I had a reference to that. You went to the opening last night, you heard that. Was countering. They had this group and said they've got some black leaders who are taking the anti-gay position, repeal the ordinance. Stephen Bornstein, a local friend of mine, called me up, got all excited about it. I said, well, okay, this article in my Herald says, what I want to know is, let me see the names of these people. I say, so to be honest, I've not heard of these people. So that makes me suspicious of what kind of following they have. I said, where is Dick Curry of the NAACP who's got a voice on a radio station, WMBM, a gospel radio station? Where is he? What about people in the urban league? What about these elected officials? What do they feel about it? And it turns out that the great majority of them are on the pro-gay side. My gosh, Dick Curry said he was. He's got a large AME church, African Methodist Episcopal Church. At least he's on for retention of the ordinance. Even the white Catholic diocese here. And right now, on an issue like this, with the problems that been in the news about the Catholic Church, this is a tough one to mess with right now. That you know about that. But there's one of them, one of the commissioners, Darren Rowell, for example, he voted against the ordinance. He wouldn't vote for it. He's conservative on this, and he believes in that. But the great majority on the other side. And so that leads to mean there are some there, but there are also some on the other side. Now, how this is going to play out when the votes cast, I don't know. And another thing about it, in the process, they, or anybody else who is campaigning on this, I would tend to caution them that when time comes to go get on the telephone, go door to door in these communities, if there is any way possible, have some black lesbians and gays go in there with them. Any way possible. Even better, somebody, if you can find somebody out enough and comfortable enough, I wouldn't suggest anybody harm their well-being doing it, but if you can find somebody who lives there in the neighborhood doing it, that's really going to change things, because what you don't want to do, you don't want to go around running around campaigning in these various communities not familiar with it. You certainly don't want to come across as being arrogant or being arrogant of the middle class or something like that. I know that tends to turn people off. Going in there as a person of privilege, because you can get that slap back in your face. In fact, it has been done at times. Saying, why should I do this? And say, here we are struggling. And say, you can hide or shelter your feelings. I've got